Hello again guys, this week for the Acquisition of Skills screencast we are going to be discussing operant conditioning. And operant conditioning was developed through a psychologist called Skinner, and Skinner believed that we could change behaviour if it was directed towards a given stimulus, and we'll talk about those definitions in a moment. Now Skinner essentially provided some rats a conditioned box, if you like, and the rats would live in the box, and inside this box, as you'll notice, there was a lever and a small food dispenser with plenty of food for the rat. Now what the rats eventually learned to do through trial and error was to press the lever in order for the food to come out of the food dispenser. So they learned, they were conditioned, if you like, to pressing that lever would give them food and therefore succeed at something. And the theory behind that stimulus response is what is known as operant conditioning. Now operant conditioning, for the purpose of your exam, could also be called Connectionist Theory. So the two terms are interlinked. And this operant conditioning involves the learning and forming and strengthening what we call a stimulus response bond. So here is the stimulus, you need to respond. I need to strengthen that bond between a stimulus and a response. And what we mean by a stimulus is that something that can influence an activity or influence a behaviour. For example, the rats were influenced by the prospect of having food, but also they may have been influenced by the fact there was a lever there, so that could have been another stimulus. The link between that stimulus and the response, so we call them the stimulus response bond, is often called a connection or an association, which is why operant conditioning is sometimes known as a connectionist theory. So operant conditioning or connectionist theory in practice, these are the steps that usually work to succeed in that practice. First thing that happens is a teacher needs to present a stimulus in a relevant sports situation. All right? So they're going to present a puzzle in a sports situation or something to get that learner interested. The learner, through trial and error, will react to the stimulus. So they might try something to react to the stimulus in that given sports situation. As the learner reacts, either correctly or wrongly, the teacher will try and shape or modify the behaviour. And when the learner performs the correct response, so what the teacher wants them to do, the teacher will then use what we call positive reinforcement, which we'll talk about within the lesson, or a reward. So let's take an example just to help you out here. So if we go back to number one, the teacher presents a stimulus in a relevant sports situation. Well, we could have a lesson on badminton, and the teacher could just put some cones at the back of one of the courts, opposite to where the students are. Doesn't necessarily have to coach or tell the players what to do in this given situation. Step two, the learner through trial and error will react to the stimulus. So the learner might think, well, I'm on a badminton court, here's some badminton rackets and a shuttle. That might look like a target on the opposite side, so I'm going to try and hit my shuttle into the target over the net. Now step three, as the learner reacts and decides to hit the shuttles towards the target and maybe misses, the teacher will then shape or modify the behaviour. So they may actually make the square a little bit bigger. It's possible to modify the behaviour, say, well, actually you're on the right lines, but you just need to get it into the box. Or they might actually leave them to it, because that will condition them to actually get the shuttle into the set area without them actually having to teach it. And step 4, when the learner performs the correct response, so if we hit the shuttle into the square that the teacher has made, the teacher will then say, well done, that's a great shot. We'll say, okay, you've hit 3 of those shots, here is a certificate. So you get a reward. Right? So we're thinking about connectionist theory in practice, and within your exam you'll need to use a specific example, of which we're going to try some examples within the class. As per usual, if you make effective notes and bring to the lesson.